Hi, this is Privateer Station. We're still traveling, so there may be sound issues in today's cast as well. However, this is day 406 of Russian invasion into Ukraine, as always, with Olexiy Arestovych, former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is day 406 with Olexiy Arestovych. Good evening, Olexiy. Yes, good evening. Sorry, I forgot to say it is Wednesday, April 5th. Time is 10 p.m. in Kiev, same time in Moscow. We have 51,000 watching us already. This number is growing, but if you keep sharing links in your social media, this number will grow much faster. So if you would have done that, these numbers likely would grow much faster. As always, I ask you to subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and if you are watching that in English and have not done the subscription part yet, please do that for the Privateer Station. Alright, let's start our stream, our Wednesday stream. Let's start with Zelensky's visit to Poland, with the statements he made. Probably the main thing in focus there is that relations between Kiev and Warsaw have made a step, a historical step, to the area that have not been until today. Because the common history between Poland and Ukraine was at least bumpy. And right now, I would say both nations are at the peak of their relations. And what is being said by Zelensky himself and the Polish side, that practically between these two countries there will be no borders, and their social and economic systems will intertwine tremendously. Of course, nobody is going to make one country out of two, as Moscow propaganda is saying, but basically it will become micro-European Union between Poland and Kiev. Ukraine is not a member of European Union yet, Poland is a member, but between each other they can integrate as if they were already within European Union. So what do you think about it? The destiny of Europe and the world was changed when Khmelnytsky brought Ukraine towards Moscow. If he would have brought Ukraine towards Poland, the map of Poland, the content of European history and probably the world would look differently. We can't even imagine to full extent, but most important that there would likely be no Stalin, I suspect. No, these other consequences, and modern-day Putin would likely be impossible as well. Russia would probably be a much freer country because there would be a bigger independent country neighbor comprised of three peoples as devised by Galич Unia, but it was a bit late. Poles were also to blame a bit for the circumstances because they did not want to give equal rights to Orthodox and versus Catholic Schlecht. So that's when Khmelnytsky went towards Moscow. But one way or another, that was the time when the destiny of Europe changed. Today is the second time this destiny can change, because Ukraine is leaving the union with Moscow and going towards the union with Poland. So it is important not to miss that second chance, and I believe we have enough reasons to believe that this time we will not let it go. And how it will change the picture of the world in the future, we'll see. The main thing is that relations between Ukraine and Poland have a lot of background, a lot of reasons, than just being neighbors. It's bigger. It's like two sisters. And I know that Poland also considers that union very important. I am in communication with military, with congressmen and politicians in Poland, so I'm quite aware of their opinion on that. And also a big role is played by personal relations between President Duda and Zelensky, and I believe we will use this opportunity now. And this will be the union of Lublin trio, as initially designed: Ukraine, Lithuania and Poland, but we'll be glad to see Latvia, Estonia, and Belarus, and maybe somebody else, but at least in that group. Old meanings never really die. The biggest number of wars between Moscow and Poland, it was actually a big number. It was about 29 battles altogether, 29 wars that these two countries had. Now is the 30th, technically, and Ukraine is now looking to join Poland and to leave Moscow. These are somewhat of a sacred things that are being unfolded now at present time. Tell me, it's an interesting thing, and the background of war, all of these historic quarrels about Volyn and Bandera and others, they kind of fade away. All of a sudden it turns out it's not that important to shake up these conflicts of old days in the face of mutual threat that both countries are facing. Ukraine definitely, and maybe Poland. So it seems like all these can be overcome, right? That each country can still have their own heroes and maintain good relations. I'll tell you more, Mark. If there is a goodwill, you can overcome anything. A good example is Israel and Germany. One would think the abyss they have between each other after the Second World War they had would not be able to be crossed. But these days they're in good relations, not just in civil aspects of life, but also militarily. They do joint trainings, joint exercises. Even though just 70 years ago people thought that this page would never be able to be overcome. So this is an example. There is always a reason to find discord. Another example would be Britain and United States. United States was a rebellious colony back in the day. Brits burnt their Washington in 1812, and a rather bloody war for independence. You can find a lot of examples in history, but goodwill determines a lot of things. In case of Ukraine and Poland, it is present in excess. Okay, so why it is difficult probably to imagine now between Russia, Moscow and Kiev the same extrapolation, although I'd think there was never so much animosity between Poland and Ukraine. Maybe some periods of time, but not in general like now. Oh no, Khmelnytsky times. There was a difficult time. Mark, there was a lot of murder and killing on both sides in those days, and one would think it would be difficult to forget it, and the curses sent and recorded in those times, they were pretty off the charts. But I think good relations can be restored even between Kiev and Moscow eventually, when there'll be reasonable people in Moscow. But historically, we just keep waiting for that. It hasn't happened yet. Alright, 185,000 already joined us, 62,000 clicked the like button. Let's talk about the front. It's roughly the same, heavy fighting, but there are a couple changes. First of all, in Marinka, we kicked their butt. They acknowledge themselves. They actually are saying that, yes, they fell back and they're holding the new line of defense. And second, they also acknowledge that near Avdiivka they had to leave some of their positions, that Ukrainian troops pushed them away. And even in their conversations you can read that, oh, it's okay, we'll get those positions back, but in reality they were pushed back. Regarding Bakhmut, there is still a lot of fighting going in the center of town, and both sides are maneuvering. We are responding to storming actions of our foes and counterattacking, but the situation is difficult. And it's stable. It's difficult but stable. President Zelensky actually made a note about Bakhmut in Poland, that if there'll be a real risk of surrounding, we will leave the area. So this is a work in progress. So far this risk has not manifested. And for now, Bakhmut serves an important task of taking away the capability of our enemy to advance in any other part of the front. What about other parts of the front? By the way, Kremenaya and etc. Over there, it's local fighting, local skirmishes, nothing strategic. All right. Let's go to the next topic. We'll discuss international news a bit later. Reuters announced that Ukraine is preparing 40,000 troops for the Storm Brigade for counteroffensive action. Storm brigades, Mark, it's plural. 40,000 is not one brigade. Okay, so I guess they misprinted. So you think that these 40,000 are the ones comprised or built up by Ministry of Internal Affairs? Do you think they'll be the main striking force? Well, no, they will not be the only main force. The main striking force would be still Ukraine military as the most well-equipped, so-called heavy detachments, tanks and artillery detachments. But if the brigade is called a storm brigade, it will definitely be used for some storm actions. Similar to paratroopers, storming paratroop detachments, which are built lighter, but they also have a doctrine of being used for storming enemy's positions. So a good example would be that 79th Brigade in September after Ilovaisk. Also, we have National Guard detachments that are equipped with heavy equipment, and we'll actually use everybody. We'll use the guardsmen, we'll use militarized police, we'll use military, we'll use every force we have for the counteroffensive. So how's the weather? Are the fields drying up a little? No, Mark. It's still raining, and it's usually no good weather until Easter. So probably a couple more weeks and then a little more to dry it up. All right. So next then. Today they showed a pilot who was captured in Bryansk region of a Ukrainian airplane. They showed a picture and a video. He was captured in Bryansk region, and he said that he was fulfilling an order, a special task for 50,000 hryvnias. He was following a different plane, and he had to go down on Russian territory. He didn't even realize he was on Russian territory. So I don't quite understand, what can you do with such a plane? 200 kilometers an hour speed. Nothing, Mark, really. You can maybe take some pictures, but it's easier to send a UAV instead. Right? So what's the reason to fly a plane? People tell different stories in captivity. Oh yeah, we understand. So we'll see what was he doing there. Of course, he is already being called an awful spy, and he had a machine gun, a rifle, and body armor, and a helmet. What else to take with you in the airplane, right? That airplane I actually am familiar with. It's Yak 31 and 32. I fly both of those. Okay, so Lukashenko came to Moscow, I think at 6:30. He arrived to Kremlin to negotiate with Putin. They showed a little bit of that meeting in the usual manner. So you think that visit is related to the placement of tactical nukes? No, I think this is a visit to balance Zelensky's visit to Poland. How do you mean? Well, they're basically playing the game of the discussion. They need to address strengthening of the relations between Ukraine and Poland. So Russia and Belarus also need to reconvene and replan their behavior. And they need to also portray a union or some kind of union between Belarus and Russia as a balance to union of Poland and Ukraine. So you think this is administrative? Yeah, this is just to balance Zelensky's visit to Poland. Do you think that they do not need to take any decisions in regards to the nukes? Well, of course, Mark, they will be discussing questions. With every visit of the country leader, there's usually some agenda to be discussed. And they'll be discussing a bunch of different questions. That's what they're usually trying to do. And of course, they'll touch upon the placement of nukes and maybe another wave of immigration somewhere so that migrants would storm Polish borders or something else. And that's what they're discussing. The only question they cannot discuss is how to win this war, because they can't. Do you understand? It's an interesting story. Today, Macron started his visit to Beijing. He's together with Ursula von der Leyen, the head of Euro Commission, and a very interesting note was made by Chinese ambassador in the European Union. I'm simplifying that from diplomatic point of view, but basically he is saying that they do consider Crimea and Donbass to be Ukrainian territory, and we're not providing any military aid to Russia in the context that they will not even do that anytime in the future. So on one hand, it looks like a visit by President of France to Beijing, and of course Chinese know how to create unofficial notes around it. And I would note that Peskov immediately made another statement in Russia saying that our relations are discussed and formalized in two agreements that were signed during the visit of Xi Jinping to Moscow. Of course, the declaratory style of both. One is that Xi Jinping and Putin and Russia and China in general is extension of these relations, that they will be union members, but China is already saying that they are only unions regarding that, only in regards to that agreement. And quoting the Chinese ambassador in the European Union, any agreement with Russia is just a diplomatic maneuver, and Russia and China have never been true allies. So, in my opinion, China will never take the side of Russia, and will always be staying away from any friendly relations with this country, especially after when they agreed to not scare, to not threaten anybody with nukes, and then 2 days after that, Russia announces that they're placing nuclear weapons in Belarus. Right. You know, Olexiy, I think China can still play this card and lure Putin deeper into belief that China is somewhat supportive of Russia. Yeah, of course they can play that on paper or in words, but in reality there'll be no union. Look, Putin today also was receiving several ambassadors, and he was behaving quite oddly. He was giving a speech to them from far away, and at the end he said that, well, I would have hugged you and shook hands, but we still have quarantine restrictions. And I looked at that. That was interesting. Everything that we discussed is supportive with his behavior about quarantine, about paranoia, about imitation of big activity, that he's on one hand saying that he's leaving Sochi and then in reality he's staying there, and the fact that he has 3 different offices done in exactly the same fashion, so it would be hard to distinguish where the video was recorded, and there is nobody really following him and Kabayeva is nowhere near to be seen. And that bag that we talked about with shit that he poops into, he's probably still traveling with it, and that other cube for special communications. So paranoia galore. But he's also he was also outlining some color revolutions and American influence, but I would say that overall intonation of his statement was careful, was cautious. There were different ambassadors that came to listen to that speech, but you could see that he is somewhat attempting to look towards de-escalating that situation. Which is kind of weird, because he is appealing to the United States to de-escalate, but then he is making actions to take down the US UAV and then captured a correspondent in Russia, US citizen. So do you think he's trying to let the steam out and kind of de-escalate situation? Probably. And that's the thing, you can still try to pretend to be an owner of the universe when you're part of a union with China, but it's been already 2 statements made by Putin when the whole has not applauded him. And here we also have the same situation, when we have a selection of ambassadors who've been selected, handpicked, tested and all, and they are present in a place where it would be expected for them to applaud at the end of his speech, yet they remain silent. So he felt rather awkward, it appears to be. I think they understood that they would not come to a mutual agreement with China fully, but they were thinking that they would play in the shadows, that China will still stay silent and Russia would be able to play around and pretend that they do have a strong union, that they do have a secret union with China that we don't talk about. And here China comes out and says, no, we do not acknowledge the union, we are not helping you with any military aid. After that, you have to be a bit more modest. And the words used were interesting. So, we never have been enemies with the United States. We have been always open to them. It's United States that are trying to push the color revolutions upon us. And we are friendly, we are open, we don't do anything. We're just poor sheep and we're just being abused. And we have to defend ourselves. So we'll see what song will he sing when there'll be other news about counteroffensive, with some real results. Because right now Ukraine has billions of US aid coming with all kinds of military support, HIMARS, artillery shells, rifles, radars, refueling systems, bridge building systems, minesweeping systems. So all that is pretty substantial aid, and all that is likely going to fall on Putin's troops in Ukraine. So their perspectives are pretty poor. He, I think, can understand generally where things are going to, and after being dumped by China, he doesn't really have other options, other cards to play. That's it. That's the end. All right, in relation to these other statements, if you read the Putin Security Service captain who defected, that psychological aspect of Putin is rather interesting, how that captain describes him. The question, is he adequate? Still is up for grabs. You've seen in that interview in that recording with ambassadors, he said that there is still a quarantine. So it means that, and the captain confirmed that he's still in quarantine, and the security service are also quarantined together with him. So whom he is communicating with in this regard? Well, in Mariupol, that other person on the video was a double. Oh, you think it's a double? I know it's a double. They do have a special department that works with doubles. It was created a while ago, but that's not the main line. The main thing here is that Putin actually displays rather visible signs of paranoia. And it's a tricky one when there are situations where he looks very logical, and he can also pretend that there is logic behind his decisions, like that big cube where he travels with for important communications that blocks any possibility to intercept. But I'm suspecting he also got a tinfoil hat in there. So it's normal for human to actually reach out, to try to talk, to mix with more people. It's abnormal for people to try to stay away from all the humans. But Captain himself is saying that when he joined the service in 2009, Putin was a normal fella, and now he is definitely displaying signs of some psychological disorder. So all these tendencies that he created that pushed him to that paranoia, he created himself. He had chance to stay authoritarian, dictatorial ruler of the country who is actively participating in the life of the country and people, but he actually went down the very narrow path. And I want to tell you that everybody who stayed in a bunker for a while, everybody knows what that bunker syndrome is. It creeps on you. But you start to feel that compression. You start to, even your posture reflects that. Your neck and shoulders, your head tries to hide in your shoulders. You start looking for some second layer, third tier in the things people discuss around you. You're looking for enemies. So Putin now has been, what, for 2 or 3 years in a bunker? And that also included COVID, right? And then he started war with Ukraine. Well, one thing, if he started the war and won it, but he started the war and he lost it, he is losing it actively. So he right now, I think, is definitely a victim of that bunker mindset, which is also a part of paranoia syndrome. At least, that's just at least. So congratulations to peoples of Russia. You are being ruled by a person who made a paranoid maniac out of himself. And he fortified all his behavior and traits with his own decisions. So you guys will have to, and are actually, taking orders from such a human. That's an interesting rhetoric statement, right? How long can they tolerate that? 271,000 are watching us, 96,000 click the like button. Mark, we're lacking a few thousand to 100,000. I have to leave the frame. I think they'll catch up. I think they'll catch up now. Okay, I'm back. Just for one motion, we got 1,000 likes in a matter of a couple seconds. So please do not forget to subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych in the description to that video, and of course to Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. This is also very important. Let's also touch upon Trump. Of course, in the context of Ukraine and all the things related to American elections that can influence that. I think, my personal opinion, he probably will not go to jail. He likely will be able to participate in primaries and maybe in the elections. And if nothing works out, then it's his fault. So I think American ethics doesn't quite allow to use judicial documents for political reasons. It is somewhat happening, but it is too public and it cannot be pushed to an extreme. So here you go, participate in primaries in autumn, and if you will not be selected as the main candidate, there are 34 accusations in Manhattan. There likely may be others added to that after, but the thesis that the war needs to be done in 23, I think it has a lot of root in the fact that America has presidential elections coming in the next year. And probably Democratic administration, Biden administration needs to approach election with something and a big political scale, with some victory. And it's quite unpredictable in regards of Trump, where he will play his cards to. Will he be aiding one side, the other side, or will he go and play like Ross Perot back in the day and poop on DeSantis' parade, and just like Ross Perot stopped older Bush and Clinton, young governor of Arkansas, managed to win, who was not too well known back then, but he was in the right position, and later he actually showed himself pretty notable figure. He played saxophone, and he's the one who actually recently made comments about the Budapest Memorandum. Well, Mark, I think, yeah, he's being made toxic on purpose. We'll see how he performs in primaries. Both sides, Republicans and Democrats, are not exactly fans of him winning the primaries. And Trump, frankly, is making a lot of this trouble for himself, because he indeed had relations with that porno model, or no, porn actress, okay, actress. And if he didn't have that, he wouldn't need to spend his campaign money or personal money for that. So it's an interesting story. For Ukrainians, Trump is a figure that causes some surprise, especially with his rhetoric that Russia has good chances of winning and that they have reasons to want to acquire certain territories of Ukraine, which is an interesting rhetoric to hear from American president or a candidate. But these are inner American things. Let them deal with that. Let's see how the world will change. It's a little difficult to predict right now how it'll turn. But some of these statements are pretty concerning. The intentions are pretty evil, how one classic said. So let's go back to Clinton. Clinton was interesting about the Budapest Memorandum. He said an important thing. He said that he regrets that he forced Ukraine to give up their nukes. This is a very important signal that the President of the United States, Clinton, back in the 90s, gave our diplomats that will definitely use this card against those who are saying that they're too tired, that we're supporting Ukraine too much, that it costs a lot, that perhaps we shouldn't. This is a reminder that when they forced us to give up our bombers and our missiles to Russia, the ones that are falling on our heads right now, because back then, in the nuclear potential, we were number 3 in the world. And Ukraine contributed a lot to the safety and security of Europe and the United States by giving up these armaments to Russia in the view of political leaders of those times. And still, we are in a position of honor. We are not asking from zero, basically. We're not starting from base zero. We are asking to help us as a result for a mistake that has been done years ago, for a mistake that was made by forcing Ukraine to give up our weapons and our nuclear weapons to Russia. And there is one more thing hiding behind it. When all that weaponry from Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Ukraine was transferred to Russia, the West actually left Moscow as a supervisor of all these nukes and these armaments. And they created this Putin. They created him. They led him to Bush's birthday party. They brought them as advance payments to G7 ahead of China. They let Putin's regime grow by putting Europe on his energy needle, allowing it to happen. They also allowed him to stir things and shed blood in Moldova and Ukraine, in Georgia, in other parts of the world. And when we were screaming and trying to draw attention, hey, things are going in the wrong direction, nobody wanted to listen to us. And we were rejected, our aspirations to join NATO. If in 2009 we would be accepted in NATO, there would nothing of that be now happening. Because in memorandum, they actually gave us guarantees of security. Ukraine was given guarantees of territorial security and sovereignty. And now we are reminding them, saying that, and Clinton is actually saying that it's good that he's bringing that up, that he has enough bravery to acknowledge that this was a huge, grave mistake they've made back in the day. It is a difficult thing to acknowledge, but this is an important gesture from him. He understands that the blood of a lot of thousands of people is on his hands with that decision also. So I think our position is a position of honor. We're all tired. We understand we're all tired with the current war, but these are the consequences of that memorandum that Yol forced us to sign. And even from the screenplay standpoint, it is very symbolic. We are being attacked with the same missiles that we gave Russia in those days. So please do not get tired. Please continue helping us. You guys helped to grow this monster across the border, and now we have to put an end to that together. Those partners that are helping us, we definitely say huge thanks to those partners who take responsibility for that mistake and who keep helping us. You know what, Olexiy? There was discussion before the war in Ukraine. Was it right? Was it not right? That Budapest memorandum. Kravchuk, I believe, and his people really were proponents of that. They were saying that in return Ukraine got this and that, and those warheads were rather useless for us, however many they were there, and etc. So discussion before the war and discussion during the war are very different, and there'll probably be a third discussion at the end of the war. Still, if Ukraine had some of those warheads from those times on the territory, there would not be Budapest Memorandum. There would be a decision made, okay, let's let Ukraine keep them and store them. We understand the logic of the West, America first of all, that it is a risk for nukes to spread around the world. Corrupt post-Soviet governments, including Ukraine, will be selling them everywhere. So better just give it all to one, which is also corrupt, but it's easier to deal with. Because it's always easier to deal with one than with many. Yeah, we understand the logic, but let me quote Oliver Stone. And his movie, the reasons are like buts, everybody has one. The thing is to really find the cores of those events that led to the current situation. Because Russia and the West were the parties that signed that memorandum, the parties that guaranteed Ukraine. And the first help we started getting, real help we started getting from the West was in April, March of 22, when the war was raging for 2 months already. I'm not even talking about what happened starting 2014 to 22. And Ukraine was basically told to take off their shirts and wash the floors in Kremlin foyer. So regarding our conversations in Ukraine, I think they'll never come to an end. I think we should have given the strategic weapons. We don't really need to use them. But tacticals, it would make sense to keep them. How many were them? Do you know? I don't remember, Mark, but even if we had just 50, I think 50 would have been enough. So basically, sovereignty of Ukraine would be fortified by the presence of nukes, right? Yep, that's the thing. I don't want to bring the necessity of nuclear umbrella, but even tactical nukes would have helped us to stay away from this war. And definitely don't want to threaten anybody with nuclear weapons, because it is actually prohibited for the country owning Ukraine, owning nuclear weapons, to threaten the country that doesn't own nuclear weapons. So if these threats are made, the other countries, members of the nuclear club, which are United States, Britain, France, and China, India and Pakistan didn't sign that. Their voices are on the statement, basically should be saying that it's impossible, it is against the law, it's against this agreement for the nuclear country to threaten nuclear weapons against the country that doesn't own one. Especially in the case when that other country being threatened is the one that made its own contribution to the safety of the world by relinquishing their own nukes. And in light of all these conflicts that Russia generated on its borders, Chechnya, Georgia, Crimea, Donbass, but the actual thing, when they started capturing Crimea, early enough, actually when Yanukovych was still an elected president in Ukraine, however he was elected, they actually started annexation of Crimea under him. He has not defected to Russia yet. We were still fighting on Maidan, we're still fighting for our freedom, we're still dying there, and they already started stealing territory. It's as if, somebody died in your family and then your neighbor comes in and says, yeah, my condolences, but starts to steal things, while everybody is still crying over the body. That's what it is like. And Russia has not become any better since then. They perverted their own people, their leadership has gone really bonkers and went further with much greater war against Ukraine. So at the end they will be facing an international tribunal. The West, it's good that they're starting that rhetoric about understanding the blame for that memorandum. Thank you, Clinton, for bringing up this topic. This is very important. This means a series of discussion on the West before the Vilnius summit, before Ukraine joining NATO, before our counteroffensive. Our leadership, all presidents of Ukraine were rather quiet about it. I would be talking about it. I think it's important too. You do not want to accept us to NATO? We actually gave up all our nukes by your orders, the weapons that are being used now to kill us. How do you like it? We're getting a lot of people killed daily, adults and kids, and you are telling us it's not so simple. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary, no NATO can happen until the certain rights of Zakarpatty people are being respected. I understand that this is electoral rhetoric of certain party, but it is not proper, in my opinion, to put on one side of the weights Mariupol with hundreds of thousands of wounded and dead citizens, and on the other side certain peoples with relations to Hungary, which by the way are actively, many of them are fighting in the Ukraine military right now, defending the country. This is an interesting political twist. So all these Sirto, all these Orbans, to all these Trumps and others, guys, we believed you, and you deceived us. Do you want us to believe you again, to your guarantees and all? That you're promising that there'll be no second round and the other rounds? The best way to preclude that is to adopt us to NATO. Then at least we think you may deliver on your promises. So you think in times when hopefully Ukraine will manage to push back and to get to the borders of 91, for Ukraine, in the conditions of victory, do you think Ukraine would be able to own nukes again? I'd put it simple, Mark, here. It's either adopting us, accepting us to NATO, or letting us have nukes as the only guarantee of our integrity. And that all looks strange, right, Olexiy? Belarus now has nukes, sponsored by Russia, and the only country can't. Belarus can, Ukraine is the only country that still cannot. The most damaged country where citizens are still fighting for their survival, plain and simple. We are the ones being prohibited from owning nukes. How else do we need to bend over backwards? What else do we need to do to be accepted to NATO or to guarantee our independence? I would say it's simple. It's either NATO or nuclear status. It's rather strange, right? Because if you not accept to NATO, very likely there'll be another war. Oh yeah, there was the second Chechen war. Nothing will preclude the second Ukrainian war. At least we can bring up this discussion now, right, Olexiy? I think yes, we need to bring it up, and we need to keep bringing it up. That's important. Alright, we've been live for 46 minutes. Almost 300,000 are with us. 297,000 plus are with us on this stream. 120,000 click the like button. Thank you for spending this evening with us. And continue sharing links to that stream in your social media. And subscribe to our channels if you have not done that yet. Feygin Live, Olexiy Arestovych, and Privateer Station. And of course, we'll be waiting to hear you all on Saturday at 10 p.m. as usual. Should be up on Sunday Eastern in the US. And see you on Saturday, Olexiy. Goodbye.